Hi there, Robin here from Expert On. Today I'm wearing the loudest shirt I have because it's going to be karaoke day. We're actually going to be talking about the PMXU-88BT, and we're covering in detail because I already have a part one, so if you haven't seen the first one, I'll have a link up here so this way you can find it. This video specifically is going to be about using it for karaoke. That means how do the PFLs, the mutes, the gain levels, all of the effects, the EQ, what is all that about? That's what today's video is going to be all about. So it's a detailed video. So if you're looking to learn something about how to set up a good karaoke system, this is what you're looking for. So let's get started. This is going to be our downward view. And remember, today, when we're talking about the PMXU-88BT, we're going to be focusing mostly on using it for karaoke and how the karaoke functions work. We are going to travel down this whole line here. We're going to specifically show how these buttons down here, of course, work as well, how your level settings are going to be, what all the rest of these are, especially on this half here, because we've got effects, MP3, sub, and our main outputs. We've also got some knobs up here, which we're probably not going to really need for today, except for the headphone, and the rest are going to stay down. As well, we're going to cover this portion right here, which is all about the effects, because that's what it's all about, and we're going to talk about the best way to use the EQ. So let's get on with today's video. So what does the 88 have that makes it so special for, let's say, a professional karaoke or somebody who really wants to have a solid piece of hardware for doing karaoke at home? And that's 4 mic inputs, and again 4 channel inputs, plus the ability to have USB with a full-on audio interface going to our computer and back to the actual unit. That gets its own volume level control right here, which makes it really, really nice to operate. Now you can also even double down and use the sound card inside your computer if you really want to use 2 audio inputs. So choose from 2 different sources and just use 2 different sound cards on your computer. You can use 7 and 8, and you can use the MP3, your choice. That would come from here, that one would come from here. Now let's start with the microphone input and what's really going to happen today. So right now I am talking to you on one of my channels on my audio interface, which happens to be from Blast Kings. They're Ultra Mix 4D. It has multiple channels on it, so it allows me to have a lapel, which I'm talking to you on right now. And we can also then hit this mute button here. And now I am actually talking to you with my lapel and a condenser microphone, which is plugged in right on top. That's why this unit has phantom power, so I can do stuff like this. Now, why did I hook it up both ways? Because if I hit mute on the actual mixer or turn down the levels, just like that, you're still going to hear me. So even though you're not hearing me through the mixer, you're still going to be able to hear everything I'm talking to you about. So when I turn these guys back up to 0 right here, you've got me still on the mixer and still on the lavalier. So when we're talking about the line inputs, this is going to let me show you the difference. So I can turn up the gain levels here, and you notice my voice gets louder. I turn that down, my voice gets to a normal level. Same thing, I turn down the line level. All you hear now is me on the actual lapel. So I'll turn that back up to 0. And again, this also helps for demonstrating the effects. If I wanted to, I've got my effects set up on the actual unit right here at 50%, and now I can turn up the effects here, and there you go. So that is what's going to happen when we actually do those kind of features. So how do we actually set this up so this way you get a really good sound at home? First of all, everybody's going to be a little different because some people's voices are lower, some people's voices are higher, and you're going to want to be able to adjust that. The gain level is what's going to make the microphone actually bigger. So this, without me getting closer to the microphone, makes the microphone more powerful. This is going to decide down at the bottom how loud my mic is going to be versus somebody else's mic. You try not to get over 0 unless for some reason during the person's song their voice gets very quiet and they get very distant, and you can bring them up a little bit more. But normally, if you want for best performance, you want to stay at the 0 point or thereabouts. Now, these 2 buttons down here are really important because if I have 4 people and they're singing in groups, they're singing duets. So I've got these 2 people singing right now, and I'm going to cue these 2 people up. I don't, of course, want them to play out on the speaker, so I'll have them on mute. Now the PFL allows me to do something really great. It has to do with the headphone control. If I engage the PFL here and here, these 2 mics are the only things I'm going to hear coming out of my headphones. So I can adjust their volume level, get them just the way I want. I can tweak them while they're holding the microphone, doing a little, hey, how's it going, sound check kind of thing, get all that set up, and I go, okay, that's great. You're going to do just fine. So then when they're done singing and I'm ready to cue them up so they can start singing, all I'm going to do is mute these folks over here, and then I'm going to unmute these ones here. So notice as soon as I hit mute, you didn't hear me anymore. You now just hear me on my lavalier, because now these two, I've taken the mute off. Now, of course, I've taken the microphones away from the first people and I've given them to somebody else. So now I'm going to push down the actual PFLs on those channels. I've lifted them up on this one and this one. So now I'm not listening to these people anymore. They're coming through the speakers now, so that's fine. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to push down these two so I can listen to them as well. That's what the PFL lets you do. So if you own this mixer and you're not hearing anything, so you've got your MP3 up, you've got all your channels up, and you're all set, you're trying it all out, and you can't hear anything, but your last one, for example, this last one is down. So we got the PFL on channel 7.8 down, but I have nothing plugged into it. All I'm going to hear out of this headphone is channel 7 and 8, this one right here. So I need to make sure that's up. Now, if they're all up, I'm listening to the whole mixing board. So one last thing about the PFL. Now, the effects can actually run into an issue when you're actually trying to, let's say, sound check channel 3 and 4. So you've got them on mute, yes. We'll turn mutes off on channel 1 and 2. Mute on 3 and 4 on. Now, you're going to hear this. You're going to hear this. So if you are actually sound checking somebody, you do not want to hear that. So how do you not hear the actual effects when you're sound checking somebody? Well, if you've got the PFL engaged on channel, let's say 3 and 4, so I've muted them and I've turned the PFL on. Mute, by the way, is optional in this case. PFL's engaged on 3 and 4. I can come up here and engage the AFL, which is the last orange button at the very top. What that does is it basically, yes, I'm listening to channel 3 and 4 on my headphones, but it's minusing the actual effects. So this is not going to be on this channel here at all. And that's the big thing. We do not want to hear the effects on here when we're sound checking them, because it could just drive us nuts. Now, of course, I'm using an exaggerated amount of effects, so this way you can really tell when the effects are being used. So there we are. There's an exaggerated amount of effects. If I want to play around with the effects, I've got volume level control. So we'll reset that. So I have the ability to decide how much effects I have in the mix, and then I can decide on each microphone how much I'm going to have by turning this knob right here. These two here are, this is my overall setup for how loud my effects are going to be, allowing me to proportionally bring them up and down. This knob is basically the same as a gain level up here. This is going to be how much I bring it in and out every single time. When I go to 0, that'll match up with what's going on here. Now, if I don't want my effects to be so big, I can basically turn this guy down to 6, let's say. And now, if I bring it in, you'll notice it's a lot shorter and very tight. It ends right away. If I turn up the actual parameters, this is going to increase the repeat cycle of it and how long it hangs around for. So it's basically extending the actual effect. That's like ping pong kind of a thing. That's what's going on right there. So that's how the effects are going to work. Now this is always going to be proportionate to what's going on out here. So I've set up my effects the way I like. I've got everything all the way there. Here we are. I turn that back down. Once I've made my choices up here, all I need to do is turn this up or turn it down. That's going to bring the effects in and out. When we're actually at 0, the effects at 0 are going to be equal to my main out. So that means I'm getting 100% of the effects going straight to here. So volume wise. So I'm going to hit the mute here one more time. So now we're just listening to the lapel. So again, if I'm at 0 here, that's 100% of the effects going to here. So it doesn't matter where this is. The effects are always going to be equal to my main level out. If I cut this down in half, then no matter where I am here, my effects will always be half of wherever my main levels are. So if they're up here, it's going to be half of that. If we're here, the effects are going to be half of this. That's how this slider relates to this. Same thing, by the way, falls true for everything else in the line. Whenever I make any adjustments here, this is always going to be a proportionate output to my mains. So if I have somebody at 0, it's an equal. Whatever's going on up here is going to be equal ratio right to here. If I have them halfway like I do here, no matter what goes on here, it's always going to be half of wherever the sliders are. That's always going to be proportion. That's how this one can be louder than this one. And that works all the way down the chain. That's how that part works. This is actual subwoofer output. So this is in relationship to where it says sub out left and right on top. So sub LR, that's going to be controlled from here. So if you have a powered subwoofer and you want to run it separately from your mains, you would hook it up here with some 1/4 inch balance or unbalanced cables. That'll be your choice. And then you get to control it freely from here. That's pretty exciting. It's crossed over at about 400, so this way you're not going to get anything above it. But that's what's going on right there. Again, this is going to bring into the mix my actual MP3 player or USB input on the back of the unit. So I can either plug in my USB from here with a proper cable. We'll add a link for this cable because it doesn't come included to the laptop, or you can put your USB in there as well. So that's what's going on there. Let's get back to the very first line again and talk about gains and level controls. So when we're back here, we've covered the buttons at the bottom, we've covered the sliders, we've covered the main out. So all the exciting little things are out of the way, but how do we actually control things when it comes to tone, to the actual sound level that we have? So again, we'll turn the effects off so we don't hear that. We'll turn the mic back on, and we'll talk a bit about these levels here. So right now, my actual gain is set to the bottom, which is in this case -6. If I turn this up halfway, we're going to be much louder on the actual system. But what we're really going to show is how this also works in proportion to my EQ. I don't want to take an EQ and turn it up, let's say 75% all across, because this is nothing. I've done nothing here at all. All I've done is made them all louder exactly the same amount. I'm always looking to have this in a mix, a proportionate mix. So let's turn them back to where they were. And now I'm going to show you how this is lined up with what's going on up here as well. If I want to adjust the overall mix, some people need some help. Some people need a little bit more highs or more mids, or maybe you're trying to reduce the amount of feedback in my mid, so I may turn this down a little bit. What you're really going to look at is what happens if I turn all these down to just 25%. It's going to be the opposite of what happened when I turned them all up to 75%. My overall levels are much lower, but everything is the same. So how do we fix that? Well, there we go. We turn up the gain. Now we've brought it right back to where we were. This allows me, if I want to bring more clarity to my voice, which happens to be in the mid-range, I can turn just up my voice. So my voice happens to be sitting here, and I've turned this up, and now I've brought it up a higher level than the rest of my voice. So my lows are down here, my highs are here, but my mids are right here, and that happens to be where the sweet spot for my voice is, right here. If I want to, balance, smooth it off a little bit, maybe I'm going to give it a little bit more on the bottom end and a little bit more on the highs, just to round it out so I don't sound too like monotone-ish. And there you go. That is how you adjust it. Now, the next person may require not so much on the line level, and they only require a subtle lift, because remember, we're comparing it against my voice, and now we've adjusted them. So notice I can pretty much now go through this whole line adjusting people at different settings without overdoing anything. Nothing is going to be past, nothing's going to be either at 25% or less or above, because everything's just going to be balanced out, and I can adjust the overall gain levels on top. I'm compensating for the fact that I pulled back a little bit with a little more gain. Because I pulled back, I gave it a little more gain on top. And that works through the whole line. So the whole idea is to avoid getting past 75% or below 25%. I don't really need to do that. I can always balance off a little bit with the actual gain levels on top. And then I can adjust how loud I have to be against everybody else. Maybe I have a quiet voice. Maybe I got to be up at the top. Maybe I have a loud voice and I need to be down a little bit, because the next person is got to be higher a little bit. And that's what's going to happen down here. Down here, this is going to allow you to adjust for people's voice levels, for how loud they are. You start with the quietest person and you set them up at 0, and then you wrap everybody else around that person. So this way, everything always sounds the same coming out at the end. When you're done, you should just have to turn this down and turn this up. That's it. Or just turn the PFLs and mutes on and off to keep your evening going. You shouldn't have to constantly be tweaking everything unless people change. If you've got different people singing, well, of course, you might want to adjust that once they start singing and, fine tune it a little bit. At the bottom, the white knobs, balance. If I need to push to the left or to the right, I would do that just by turning this knob right here. Same thing across the whole board. And then, of course, the effects, how much some people like more, some people like less. This is a personal preference. How much or how little effects and ping pong you use up here is going to be your choice. On this model, you turn the knob up, push down on it, and that's going to engage that effect. And then all you do is decide how much actual parameters you want to add to it, how much ping pong option you want to add to it. And that's what's going to happen here. So there you go. That hopefully covers all of those features. Now again, most of this is just all repeat across the whole board. Again, we've talked about these two knobs here. And again, just to cover this one here, this is like the gain level. This is going to decide how strong or how much effects are going to be pushed in to the line, and then you're going to control it from here. So the idea is bring this up to where you want it to be. Make sure all the settings are set. Bring everything up to level, and then we're all set to go. Now again, this might be here, and then I can drop it down, slide it back up, just like that. So the last part we're actually going to talk about on today's video is going to be the actual mixer, the EQ built right into it. We've got ourselves a 7-band EQ with the ability to do everything and anything we want right from here. This is going to be for the room. This is how I EQ the room. This is how I EQ people, is over here individually. The music coming in gets all EQ'd individually, but now I have to adjust the sound for the room. That's going to happen right here. You've got a 7-band EQ. If I turn it on, because it's flat, nothing's going to change. But if I bring this up here, we're going to notice that I'm going to add a lot more on the bottom end on this side here, and I can take it away just like I can add it in. It's gone. It's back to neutral. As I get closer to the middle, so the 3 in the middle are going to really reflect, in this case, my voice. So if I turn these 3 down, I've had a big drop in my voice. If I bring these 3 right up, you'll notice a big jump in my voice. Now you notice that if I don't do any subtle adjustments on it, I'm going to get a really hard change to the voice. So you want to be gradual with whatever changes you make on the system. And again, this is like cream and sugar in your coffee. There's no right or wrong. There's just what you like. The only thing this can do when it comes to being right or wrong is feedback. Because when you're doing karaoke, especially if you're at home, you have to control the amount of feedback you're going to get between the microphone and the speakers in the room. And your first line of defense is placement of the speakers, how much gain you have on the microphones. Then you can actually start looking for feedback in the frequency range. You pull this down and see if you're actually going to get feedback anymore. Bring that back up. Do I get feedback? No. If I bring it up a little bit, yes. So definitely that's one way to do it. You can work through the whole line, find out where the feedback is, and pull back a little bit on that, and that tends to be a big plus. Feedback can also hide inside the effects. So what happens is once that loop starts, that ping pong action starts, it can accelerate because it's a perfect frequency match going back and forth, and it gets caught in a loop, and then you get runaway feedback. So that can also happen. So sometimes if you keep the actual levels down a little bit on the effects, that can certainly help you on controlling the amount of feedback. Also, the first thing I always try, turn down the gains. Don't pull down on the lever here. Don't pull your slider down like that. That's, once you have feedback, that's the quick way to kill it and get rid of it. But normally if you bring down your gain levels, make your microphone a little bit smaller, that is going to definitely help. Don't compensate by turning this up because, well, that's not helping anymore. Bring this down a little bit, sing a little closer to the microphone. Have the microphone pointed right at you, so this way it's picking you up and not the whole room, and that'll allow you to adjust there. Outside of that, again, a lot of feedback can be cleaned up right here. Feedback can be cleaned up right here. and feedback can be cleaned up right here. So these are the three mains: your gain, the level of your effects going in on top on the gain, how loud or how much effects you give on it, how much ping pong you actually put on your system is going to also affect how much feedback you're going to get. And then of course you can clean it up with the EQ, trying to find where the feedback is happening and pull back a little bit on it. So there you go. I'm sure you all have a million questions, so you go right ahead and ask them at the bottom, and we'll come back and visit this another day. But for now, this is going to cover it. This video is specifically about using this mixer for karaoke, which is primarily what it was first set up for. Probably one of the most impressive karaoke mixers out there, because effects for karaoke are not the same as effects for a band. We're trying to really achieve something much different with a good karaoke effect. I mean, if I use the Mackie mixer, or if I use the Behringer mixer or an Alto mixer, I couldn't get the ridiculous type of effects that I can pull off of this machine because of the way it's built. Built with a lot of delays, built with a lot of ping pong capability, built with a lot of different ways of actually bringing it in and out. And a lot of mixers don't offer both PFL and mute options on all their channels. So again, big karaoke options. So there you go. That's today's video. If you subscribed, I always say thank you very much. If you haven't, that's always a good way. If you like to find out right away when videos come out, that's what the little pin is for. So we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.